In the year 812, a royal court in western India issued a legal document engraved on plates of copper. A king was granting away a village. Routine, forgettable, except for one passage. It describes a temple 500 kilometers away, and it records that when the gods saw this temple, they refused to believe human beings had made it. They decided it had created itself. This is that temple. It stands in a pit cut 30 meters into a mountain in the Deccan. It is the largest sculpture on earth. No stone was ever placed on stone here. Every wall, every bridge, every elephant is one continuous piece of the planet. Nothing you're about to see was built. It was removed. And somewhere on this mountain, something is missing. Most visitors never notice it. You will. Search for this temple online, and you will meet a story that goes like this. 400,000 tons of rock removed by hand. 18 years, start to finish. 7,000 laborers, working day and night. A feat so impossible that some insist humans never did it at all. That the real builders came from somewhere else. And a final chapter. A Mughal emperor who sent 1,000 men to destroy this temple, hammered at it for 3 years, and gave up. It is a magnificent story. Almost every number in it is wrong, but not in the direction you think. The truth is not smaller than the legend. It is stranger. To see it, forget the temple for a moment. 3 things had to exist on this exact hillside before the first hammer ever fell. A rock, a road, and a wall. The rock first. 66 million years ago, lava flooded this corner of India, flow over flow, and cooled into basalt, a stack of stone layers piled deep, hard enough to last forever, and along the seams between the flows, just soft enough to yield to iron. Then, the road. This cliff stands beside a trade route that merchants had walked for centuries. Because the road never died, this place was never lost, never swallowed by jungle, never forgotten and rediscovered. For 1400 years, someone has always been standing here, watching. And for 200 years before our story begins, someone had been carving. Buddhist monasteries, Hindu shrines, generations of rock cutters, sharpening one inherited craft on this exact cliff. And then, the war. In the 700s, a vassal clan called the Rashtrakutas rose against their overlords, the Chalukya emperors, and destroyed them. A new dynasty ruled the Deccan. It needed to say so, permanently. The Chalukyas had a masterpiece, the Virupaksha temple at Patadakal, built to celebrate their own greatest victory. So the new king, Krishna, made a decision that still stops historians cold. Take the defeated empire's finest design, double it. Likely use the defeated empire's own master artists. And instead of building it, carve it whole out of a mountain of the god's own rock. Not stone upon stone, one stone revealed. Surveyors climbed to the top of the cliff and marked 3 trenches on the bare hilltop. Work crews cut straight down, 2 corridors driven back into the hill, a third connecting them, until a colossal island of basalt stood alone, severed from the mountain on 3 sides. At the back wall, the cut drops 30 meters. Then the real carving began. At the summit, the finial, the ornament that crowns the tower, was among the first things on this temple ever finished. The courtyard floor was among the last. Sculptors completed each level in full detail, then cut away the rock they were standing on and descended. The temple came out of the mountaintop first, sinking into existence level by level. Understand what that means. Nothing here was ever added. Nothing could be. The pavilions, the staircases, the 5 shrines ringing the tower's upper terrace, the 2 great victory pillars, all of it spared, not built. The stone bridges that connect the gateway to the pavilions to the temple itself were never lifted into place. They are simply rock that no one was ever allowed to touch. We know this is how it happened because they left the proof. In corners of the courtyard, rough, unfinished rock still sits below fully finished sculpture, work frozen mid-descent. A photograph in stone of the method itself. The advantages were enormous. No scaffolding, no lifting, no collapse. Everything ever carved rested on the living mountain beneath it. But the price was absolute. In this method, there is no repair. One deep miscut through a reserved bridge, a pillar, an elephant. And that element is gone from the design forever. You redesign around the wound, or you abandon the mountain. Year after year, iron against stone, and no one was ever allowed a single unrecoverable mistake. That is how they did it. Now the numbers, the real ones. So, the numbers. Here is what the records say about how long this took and how many hands it needed. Nothing. There are no records, no payroll, no chronicle, no work account, no start date, no completion ceremony. The famous 18 years is simply the approximate length of one king's reign, dressed up as a construction schedule. The 7,000 laborers invented. Every number you have ever heard about this place is a guest wearing a costume. But the mountain keeps honest books. Measure the pit. 82 meters by 46, averaging perhaps 15 to 20 deep. Run the geometry, subtract the temple, and the rock removed comes out near 200,000 tons. The viral 400,000? It does not fit the hole. Now spread 200,000 tons across roughly 2 decades. It comes to 25, maybe 30 tons a day. A few hundred workers, splitting basalt along its natural seams. With iron tools, their trade had been sharpening for 600 years, demanding, relentless, and entirely human. This is where the alien theories go to die. Not shouted down, just outcounted. Because the tonnage was never the miracle. Any empire can move rock. The miracle is that for 20 years, on a project where repair was physically impossible, nobody made the one mistake that would have ended it. The miracle is not the labor, it is the nerve. And those missing records, that silence where a payroll should be, hold that thought. On this hillside, silence is about to become the whole story. Before that, look again. Because the temple you have been picturing is the wrong color. The bare grey stone you see today is not Kailasa. It is Kailasa, with its skin gone. When the carvers finished, plasterers followed, and they coated the entire temple in white lime. Researchers who sampled Ellora's plasters report something unexpected in the mix. Fibers of hemp worked into the lime, which may be part of why these surfaces endured insects and centuries at all. Then came painters, layer over layer, generation after generation, until local memory gave the place a different name. Rang Mahal, the painted palace. Understand the intention. Kailasa is Shiva's mountain, a Himalayan peak wrapped in snow, so they raised the Himalaya in the Deccan, a white summit blazing out of black volcanic rock. And on its southern face, they carved a warning. The demon king Ravana, in a cavern beneath the same mountain, straining with all his arms to tear it from the earth. Parvati recoils, a servant flees, and Shiva, calm, presses one toe and pins the mountain still. A mountain that cannot be moved, carved by the only people who ever moved one. And nowhere on it, no wall, no pillar, no surface, did a single one of them write a name. No signature, no dedication, no founder's boast, not one carved word, anywhere, claims this place. That should feel impossible. Kings sign their monuments. That is half the point of monuments. And this dynasty knew how. Walked to the modest cave next door, and there, on its wall, the Rashtrakuta's founder, a king named Dantadurga, left his inscription. They signed the small cave. They left the wonder of the world anonymous. So how do we know who made it? Only from a distance. That copper document, from the beginning, the one where the gods refused to believe, was written 40 years after the work, 500 kilometers away, by a different branch of the royal family. It credits a king called Krishna the First with a temple of wonderful form at Ellora. It never says when he built it. It has no physical connection to this hill. It is, quite literally, hearsay in copper. And that thin thread has historians arguing to this day. In 1952, the scholar Hermann Goetz studied the carving styles and concluded that no single king could have done this, that the work sprawled across generations, and that the founder Dantadurga's role may have been deliberately erased by the successor who took the credit. 30 years later, M.K. Davlikar answered, "The core is one vision and one reign, Krishna's, with later shrines added around it." Most historians today land near the middle. About 2 decades, 2 kings. The largest sculpture on earth, and we cannot fully agree on who to thank, because the one voice that could settle it chose to say nothing. But history hates a vacuum. Where the mountain kept silent, others started talking. First came a legend. 7 centuries after the carvers left, a text called the Katha Kalpataru finally wrote the missing story. A king lies ill. His queen vows that Shiva will have a temple and that she will fast until she sees its finished spire. An impossible promise, until an architect named Kokasa begins at the top of the mountain. And within days, the spire stands complete against the sky. It is a folk tale. Kokasa may never have existed. But listen to what the story preserved. Start at the top, finish the spire first. For centuries, a bedtime story was the only thing on earth that remembered how this was actually done. Then came an enemy. You heard the tale at the start. The Emperor Aurangzeb, 1,000 men, 3 years of hammering, defeat. Here is what the evidence actually holds. Sculptures here were deliberately damaged. That part is real. The broken figures are in front of you. But the 3-year siege, no primary source has ever been produced for it. It is a story, repeated until it hardened. The documented truth is stranger. Aurangzeb died in the Deccan and chose for himself a grave of deliberate simplicity, bare, open to the sky, at Kuldabad. 2 kilometers from here, the emperor of the legend lies on the temple's own horizon. Then, gravity. Of everything the carvers spared, one stone bridge eventually fell. It is the only piece of Kailasa the mountain ever took back. In this method, it can never be replaced. And finally, imitation. On this same hillside sits Cave 30. Locals call it Chota Kailasa, the Little Kailasa. An attempt to copy this temple, begun and then stopped, stands unfinished. No one, anywhere, has ever completed another. Which brings us back to the copper plates. Because the review of the gods, the one from the very beginning, has a second sentence. After the gods' disbelief, the document records one more reaction. The architect's own. The master who made this temple, it says, looked at his finished work and was struck with astonishment, unable to understand how he had built it. The only human voice history ever attached to Kailasa is its own maker, confessing disbelief. Maybe that is the answer to the missing name. The carvers of Kailasa added nothing to this mountain, not one stone. For 20 years, they only took away, removing everything that was not temple, until what remained was something even they could not quite believe they had touched. You do not sign a mountain. The kings who paid for it are still debated. Krishna, the king credited with it, probably never lived to see the whole of it complete. The workers left no names. The architect left only his astonishment. Everyone who made Kailasa disappeared into it. The work was so total, it absorbed its makers. 12 centuries on, the plaster has fallen, the paint has faded, one bridge is gone, and 200,000 tons of absence still stand on that hillside, holding the shape of a temple. The gods called it self-existent. They were wrong about who made it. But looking at it now, you can understand the mistake.